What's going on, guys? Today I am here with PIEGUYRULZ, and we're basically going to talk about every single 3D Mario game that Nintendo has made in the past 20 years, going from Mario 64 all the way to Mario 3D World, I guess if you can count those as 3D Mario games. Anyway, how you doing, PIEGUY?
Hey Nate, I'm doing good. I'm ready to talk about some Mario.
Awesome. So, first things first, let's just jump right into this. Let's talk about Super Mario 64. So, I'd like to hear your thoughts. What did you first think about this game when you first played it?
Mario 64. I played this game long before I had an N64. This was like the quintessential, if you're going over to a friend's house, or alternatively, your parents drag you to like one of their friends' barbecue and their friends have kids. This was like what you played. And so I played a lot of it like that, and I mean, eventually I got an N64, and eventually I got the game for myself. But it was just, it's weird because our generation, or at least people that started about when I did, I didn't have a Super Nintendo. I had a Game Boy, but I didn't have a Super Nintendo. So for me, it was never the like giant leap, like in terms of graphics or whatever, or maybe it wasn't. I just never thought about it, or I don't remember. But in terms of like playing the game, it played unlike anything I'd ever played. Again, because it's stuck on the Game Boy Color, and it was just a blast, and just also one of those like games that you played with just a bunch of people around, and tried to figure out what to do and where to go, and yeah, just really cool.
It's interesting because like you're saying, back in the day when I played this game with friends, because like you, all of my friends owned Super Mario 64, and like you as well, I didn't have any consoles. Like I had a Game Boy Color, and I got an N64 one Christmas because one of my close friends and I were always playing like Smash Bros, Mario Party, Mario 64 on his N64, so they eventually got me one for myself. But it's interesting because back then, there was no internet. None of us really had strategy guides for Mario 64. So while this is a single-player game, we all played it together trying to figure out where the stars were. Because when I first played this, I got so lost. I mean, it took me like 20 minutes on my first go to figure out where Bob-omb Battlefield was. Like, I was trying to go into all the doors, and Bowser wouldn't let me in, and I was getting frustrated. And I remember it was the last door that I checked in the castle when I finally found Bob-omb Battlefield, and I started playing, and I was just mesmerized because there really was just absolutely nothing like it at the time, and I still find it to be a really great experience to this day.
It's a little difficult to put yourself in that mindset now because not only do you have the internet, but like Mario 64 has been out for so long that a lot of this stuff is just ingrained. It's just like you just know it out of muscle memory, or you've watched a Let's Play, or you've watched 3 Let's Plays, or you've seen the walkthrough or whatever. But yeah, like simple things, all you got in terms of like stars were the title of the mission. And
the titles were bad.
Yeah,
like
and
the clues they give you, like blast to the wall for
oh,
Mom's Fortress. What?
Yeah,
that makes no sense.
Forget that one. And yeah, especially if you're a kid that's just like anxious to play, you might not even look at the name of the mission. You might just jump right in. So that's I think that's a lot of my experience with the game when I was younger was Bob-omb Battlefield, and the second world, the water one, blanking on the name.
Jolly Roger Bay.
Yes, that one. Which was also difficult because thanks to the water, you didn't necessarily know. It was not obvious that you had to like dive deep underwater and then go through a little tunnel and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I spent a lot of time in Bob-omb Battlefield.
Yeah, things that may seem obvious nowadays were not obvious back then, because I think our generation is much more adapted to playing games like this. But back then, like this was so difficult for us. Like it just took us forever.
I mean, not only did we not have resources. I mean, the internet was a thing at this time. It's just it was a very primitive thing, and most a lot of kids weren't like surfing the web or whatever. I don't know if there would have been a walkthrough at the time, but yeah, I mean, like you got to figure. Not only were we younger, so like figuring out things was more difficult, but like navigating a 3D game for like the first time, even just something as simple as that was a little different. And I mean, as some people might find when they go back to older games and the camera control is really awful. You know, it's that in and of itself is like a challenge to overcome, and then you gotta get in the level, figure out what you're supposed to do, and actually have the skills to do it. You know, all as however young we were. You know, we're talking like 20 years ago, so I was probably like 5 or 6 when I first played.
I think I was like 8 years old when I first played it. I remember it being such a huge accomplishment. If I played for like 2 hours and I got 1 star, I felt like the happiest kid on the planet. I'm like, wow. I remember figuring out that, you could get a star every time you collected 100 coins in a level. And even that was challenging because it was really easy to die back then. Like I'd get 60 or 70 coins and then end up dying or whatever. So what's your favorite level, do you think, in this game?
It's not necessarily because it's objectively the best, but I really like Bob-omb Battlefield because I just spent a lot of time there when I was younger, and there's a lot of fun stuff like seeing the the chain chomp, like especially for the first time, just seeing that big thing just kind of sitting there on the tether, having the mountain be in the center of it, and the race that kind of shows off the level. I think it is very, very well designed for a first 3D level out there. And you still got the Goombas stomping around, so it's familiar. Doing the cannon blast for the first time is a lot of fun. Also because I really like that stage on Mario Party, so which I may or may not have played before Mario 64. I don't know, but yeah, it's just a classic level. How about you? What's your favorite level or world?
So I know a lot of people do not agree with me on this, but I really like Lethal Lava Land. There's a lot of reasons for it. For one thing, I like the idea of, like, remember when you were a kid and you're like jumping around on furniture and you pretended the floor was lava?
Yeah, floor's lava.
That's basically this level. The floor is lava. The platforms are the furniture. So it kind of brings reminiscent back to those days. And I also love when you get to like star 5 or 6 and you can access the Koopa shell and then you can just ride around on the lava collecting coins. Like, that was so much fun. And I'll never forget when I first jumped into the volcano, because I was curious. I was like, wait, can you actually go in the volcano? And then there's a whole new level in there. My mind was so blown the first time that happened. I couldn't believe it.
It was super satisfying bullying the bullies as well.
Oh,
whenever you got one of those in the lava, that was always like a really satisfying thing.
Yeah, I could not figure those guys out. I remember first fighting those guys too. I tried jumping on them and they didn't die, and I was like, wait, what? This is really weird. And then you have to push them into the lava.
And again, it's obvious now, but like back then, you wouldn't even have known what the name of those guys are. Like I believe one mission is called Bully the Bullies, but like, how would you know that that's what they are? You wouldn't. Now
Exactly.
it's like a part of just ubiquitous pop culture that just but to experience that and try to do that the first time difficult. What about is there anything about the game in general that you dislike? We'll get into specific levels that are your least favorite, but is there anything about the game that you're not crazy about?
Well, I mean, as I'm sure everyone knows on this channel, if you know who I am, I've played this game a lot, so there's a lot of things I like about it, but the one thing that I will never like about it, even, with like, now there's like ROM hacks of this game that try to improve the camera. Even with those improvements and, just with the original itself, the camera is bad. It's okay in some levels, but there's just some points in time where like the camera needs to zoom out or you need to be able to move in a certain direction, but the game won't let you do that. So I've always had, my biggest issue has been with the camera in general.
Yeah. I think if I had to say, I definitely agree with you. But I also think that that's definitely a product of the time. Like that's a problem with it, but not something that I would say is like the fault of the developers. Yeah, I guess in a similar vein, I do wish that some of the stuff in the game was hinted at a little bit more, because I do remember being stuck on a lot of things. Like the clock level, I had no idea that when you jumped in it would be different at different times. Like I knew the level was different somehow, but and again, I was a younger kid, so like obviously now it's a little more obvious, but for younger kids that's not immediately obvious. Or how about the water level, where when you jump the water level is wherever the level you jump in the painting. That's not obvious.
Yeah, I didn't even figure that out until like a couple years ago, actually.
Yeah, like that's.
It's not obvious at all. but it's
No.
actually required. Well, it's not it's not technically required, but there's one level where, or for that specific level, I can't think of the name. No,
Not
wow.
Dire Ducks.
This is sad. I can't.
Wrong game.
Can't think of the name. This is pretty sad. You know what I'm talking about, though.
Yes.
The one where you change the levels. There's this one part where you need to basically backflip into the painting so the water's at its highest peak, and that way you can access the bob-omb to open up the cannon to do the red coin star in the other part of that level. But there's no way to figure that out.
The very cleverly named Wet Dry World.
Yes, that's what it was. Couldn't think of it.
You know, these names of the worlds could be a little better.
Yeah.
Dire Docks, Wet Dry World, Tall Mountain, Tiny Huge Island, Tick-Tock Clock. Little basic.
Oh. Nintendo's very good at they're not very good at naming their courses in general, though.
Very true. All right. So what level or world do you dislike, or at least like the least, or get most frustrated on?
Well, I'd probably have to say Rainbow Ride. Now, obviously, it's the last world, so it's expected that it's going to be difficult, and it's definitely challenging. But the biggest problem is that for a few of those stars, all you're doing is just sitting on the magic carpet and waiting. Like, you're not actually doing anything. You're just waiting, ticking down the time, hoping to not fall off the carpet by accident. And I don't know, I feel like there should have been more challenging, platforming elements instead of just waiting on the carpet.
It's not very well designed. It feels very much like, let's just throw in a bunch of random stuff into the sky.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Like, there's not much cohesion. And it also feels like the difficulty of the level is just that there's no ground. And it feels like that's a really kind of cheap way to make the difficulty, because that's just a constant difficulty throughout the entire level. There's no part that I'd say is like necessarily more difficult or less difficult, because all of it is you fall, you die. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing that ramps up as you get further in. You know what I mean? Like I think a lot of people would agree that that's probably the worst.
Exactly.
Which is ironic, because it's like that. And it's weird too, because I think probably the clock would be a better final stage, because there's some brutal stuff in that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, honestly, I think the Tick-Tock Clock level is harder, but it's also more fun than Rainbow Ride, which is why I'm going to say Rainbow Ride is my least favorite.
Okay.
What about you?
Well, I think my least favorite is Hazy Maze Cave. Okay, I could not figure that stage out as a kid. I had no idea what I was doing at any time. I felt just completely lost. Now that I'm older, I can actually navigate it a little bit, but I still don't like it. It's
very confusing if you don't know what you're doing. Like even the maze to this day, like the thing with mazes in 3D platforming games is they don't really work, because like you can't really see where you're going. You're like a rat in a maze. There's no distinction within the maze itself, so that makes it hard to figure out where you've been or where you haven't been.
And you have a lot of stuff in 64 that are very open, very colorful, very fun and upbeat worlds, and then this is just this like enclosed, very oppressive, very like render distance foggy, intentional or not, kind of place that just it's my least favorite. But also just something that's probably relatively like controversial. I don't necessarily hate this, but it's one that I'm not crazy about, is Shifting Sandland, just because like I like the motif and I like going inside the pyramid and stuff, but there's a lot of little irritating things about that level. Like there's the quick stand, there's the stupid thing that's gonna steal your hat, you have to get up on top of that top platform to get the fly cap, I believe, and sometimes like getting the jump to get on there can be a pain. There's just like a lot of little annoyances that, especially when I was younger, was just like really frustrating.
Yeah, as a someone that speedruns this game casually, I'll say that this level can be particularly annoying. I don't find the pillars that annoying personally, because they're kind of glitchy. You can just kind of run up them even if you're not haven't gained any speed, which is really weird. But yeah, the quicksand can definitely be a bit of a pain. I won't lie about that.
Also, I think where you start in the level is a bit annoying, because you don't start like in the center of anything. It's not even like a path. It's like you start like around the corner from where you're supposed to be, and every time you have to go through the quicksand / whatever those things are called, the stupid boxes.
Well, I think they did that because they put a red coin in that tiny little corner that probably nobody would have been able to find if they didn't start kind of close to it.
Maybe that's it.
Maybe that's what it is.
But I don't like super hate that level or anything. And the game as a whole, it's a classic. It's amazing that something that is technically so primitive, it's technically like, one of the first of its kind, and yet it is still enjoyable and playable to this day. Like, think about that. Think about, like, in terms of, like, computers. Like, if you're playing on a computer, or you're using a computer that's, like, the first of its kind. Like, try using a computer from, like, 20 years ago.
No one's gonna do that.
How primitive and irritating would that be? But this game, and similarly, other games that, like, have evolved so much are hard to go back and play the first installment of. This one just was made so well, and they had this just almost like prophetic, like, view of how 3D platformers should be and what to do with them and all that it's just enjoyable. Here we are years later.
In fact, this game was so good that they ended up remaking it on the DS. Now, we are going to technically go in order in terms of this whole retrospective, but we don't have too much to say about the remake. So I guess real quick, what are any of your thoughts about the remake? Like, what kind of things do you like about it, or what don't you like about it?
Well, it's on a D-pad.
Yeah.
It seemed like very obvious filler content for the DS right when it came out. Honestly, probably my favorite part about it all was the minigames, because it was just a bunch of really experimental touch-based minigames, but they were actually fun. And yeah, the main game itself, it's still roughly the same. Really, really pixely because of, DS. It was cool playing as the other characters, and that's about all I have to say. How about you?
Yeah, I have to agree. I really enjoy the minigames. That was like the minigame phase, 2004 through 2006. Like every single DS game. Well, obviously not every single DS game, but a lot of them that normally wouldn't have minigames had them in there because of the touchscreen. But yeah, like same with you, I really enjoyed playing as the new characters, and I liked how they added brand new levels and new missions to each world. But that D-pad was not good. And the fact that you also had to push a button to run.
And it stinks because it would be cool to get a remake of Mario 64, but because technically this is the remake, like it would have been great on the Wii or the GameCube or even the Wii U.
I wish they did this on the 3DS actually, because that has at least a control pad or a joystick.
But I think a part of it is just that the original game does hold up so well that it didn't even necessarily need a remake, and people don't really remember Mario 64 DS too much, but the original, of course, is a classic.
All right, so I guess moving on to Mario Sunshine. So I remember first getting a GameCube, and I never even heard of Mario Sunshine at the time, because again, the internet existed like in 2002, but I didn't have very much access to it. I had like dial-up or something really slow.
Oh gosh.
So I remember getting Sunshine for Christmas one time, and I looked at the cover, and I was like, what the heck is this? So curious, what did you first think of Sunshine?
Well, I think I saw some of the ads. You can look them up on YouTube. They're like weird ads about like anti-pollution, but with Mario. But yeah, I remember it was like the first thing I got when I got my GameCube, and I loved it. Like it looked so good. Like the water and everything compared to the N64 was just beautiful. And I had a lot of fun playing it. I had the guidebook. So, I don't know how much I was on the internet at that point, around 2001, 2002-ish, but, like, I had the guidebook, and the guidebook really helped a lot. I like guidebooks, especially for some games, and as a kid, they were, like, real saving grace when games weren't specific in what you had to do.
Yeah, having official guides back then were, like, the coolest thing ever, because, like, you have all the answers in this one book, and you can figure out everything. And I didn't have too many guides, but
what's cool about guides for Mario games is that, like, a lot of it is, I mean, there's definitely some fun in figuring it out, and these days I wouldn't use a guide, but, like, a lot of the challenge of Mario was actually being able to do it. You know what I mean? Like, just because I could look up in a guide, like, where to find the mission or whatever, doesn't mean it was just solved for me. I still had to do the platforming and still had to find specific parts and stuff like that, so yeah, continue your thought.
Yeah, so I guess when I first played Sunshine, it was actually I had very similar feelings when it came to Mario 64. I thought it was very cool. I got very immersed with it. But I got lost a lot because I actually didn't have a guide for this game. Like, I could figure out what to do. I was able to get like 10 or 20 shines on my own. But then after that, like, I really started to get lost. I couldn't figure out what to do after that.
I think it's not, the level itself is fine, but I think one of the worst things about this game and the most obtuse was, do you know what I'm gonna say?
What are you gonna say?
It has to do with unlocking a level.
Oh, I'm drawing a blank.
Staring at the sun.
Oh yes, I remember that star now.
Standing in a, it's not a star. It's to unlock the level, the entire level.
They had that in Mario 64 too, as well, though.
Did they? No, they didn't.
Yeah, you stare at the ceiling, and that's how you get to the flying world.
Okay, but that's one level. This is an entire world that you need to progress the game, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was pretty cryptic.
Like, I think the news ticker at the bottom was like, hinted at it, but like, go stand in the Sun Plaza and stare into the sun, children. Do exactly what your parents told you not to.
Yeah, so much for being an environmentally friendly game.
Good for the environment, bad for your health.
Yeah. No, I guess I remember one thing I remember about the game was when you're supposed to give the piantas the certain types of fruit, and like I had a hard time doing that because like the engine is kind of strange. Like when you throw the fruit, it's hard to tell how fast you're throwing it or which direction it's going to be thrown in. So like I would spend like 10 minutes trying to give this person like whatever 3 bananas, and the first time I was like, all right, I'm gonna get a star for this. No, you get a blue coin. And at the time I didn't know what the blue coins are for. I'm like, okay, so what?
So what are some of your favorite levels and worlds?
I guess I'd have to say all of the non-flood levels are some of my absolute favorites. First off, the music, absolutely amazing. The do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Oh my gosh, so catchy. And I know obviously the point of the game is to use flood for the levels, but I like the idea of kind of taking a break from it and just solely focusing on a tough platforming level and trying to just get through it.
Absolutely, those are some of the best. I also like Pina Park is the name of it, I believe.
Yeah, Pina Park.
Just all of the missions over there at the amusement park were just really cool. Like having to shoot down the Bowser balloons.
Yeah, that one's so hard.
It's difficult, but it's fun. That's also where the reveal is of who Shadow Mario is.
Yep.
So that's like a big story part of the game. I also remember there's just some fun ones with like the Monty Mole. There's just a lot of fun stuff over there, and it's just a really neatly designed world because one of the things about Sunshine was that the worlds were actually, they felt like places that could exist, whereas 64 was a lot like fantasy, here's a lava area, here's a desert, here's stuff. This one had actual levels where there were like houses like people lived at. And this level was designed like it was an amusement park. I mean, obviously certain liberties had to be made, but like in general it just looks like an amusement park, and they worked in missions around that instead of, I guess, the other way around, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, especially like Hotel Delfino. I'm not the biggest fan of that level. I find some of the stars like inside the hotel to be cryptic, but like you said, it definitely feels like a place that you could actually visit.
Yeah.
I mean, like it's structured so well. Like there's like a really beautiful opening outside the hotel, and then you go in and you can go up certain floors. You can even go to the ceiling. There's like a casino. Like it's crazy how accurate they were, and I think that kind of helped make us feel a bit more related to the game.
What made me feel really related to this game is the voice acting. Very, very believable, very real. Raw emotion in there that no game has ever been able to convey.
Oh yes.
Oh.
Couldn't agree more.
All right. Well, since we're getting more to dislikes, are there any levels or worlds that you're not a fan of?
I am not. I think everyone hates this level. Not a fan of Pachinko Machine. Everyone. First off, getting there is so weird. Like you jump off of, like it's underneath a bridge and you have to be standing on top of a boat. It's a weird way to get into the world. But then you try to play it, and it's like, what happened to the controls? I mean, the controls are fluid and wonderful. until you try Pachinko Machine. We were talking earlier, it's almost like maybe this was like the last level they were working on and they didn't finish polishing the controls.
And it's
like,
glitchy.
Yeah.
It's super, you get stuck, like, I don't mean like stuck as in you can't progress. I mean like Mario will get stuck in certain things if you don't do it right. And also the way he just like slowly slides down the back of it makes it so slow and painful and
tedious, yeah. Like if you miss where you're trying to go, it's like you just wasted 20 seconds of your life because you got to slide down that little chute all the way over again.
Who like playtested this or whatever? Because again, like I feel like they could have cut this. Like if they needed an extra shine sprite, they could have, I don't know, thrown in more blue coins or just put another one in somewhere. But like this was, yeah, I think it was a cool idea.
I think it would have been better if if this level was like inside another world, but not as a separate level so much. It doesn't, I don't know, I'm just not a fan of it. Most people aren't a fan of this level. Which levels do you not like?
I don't like Corona Mountain. It's not the final boss fight. It's the area leading up to it where you're in a boat. I'm gonna be honest, I never beat this game. I still haven't. Because I just lose all my patience with that. I've made it to the end and then like just barely died like right at the end.
Ugh.
Like a few times. And it just I could beat it, but like I mean I've looked up what the final boss fight's like. It doesn't look like anything particularly that I really need to play. But yeah, it's very, very tedious, and I think really it's because of the lack of checkpoints. Mm-hmm. If there were checkpoints, then it would be less tedious. Like the idea is okay, but having to restart it from scratch every time, and like every time you go for one of the blue coins and you like you end up sinking your boat because of it. It's yeah.
I remember when I was like 3 years ago, I made a top 10 on the hardest shines for this game, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna 100% this game. And one of the hardest parts was, it wasn't like I find this level to be somewhat difficult, but like you said, the boat section is just ridiculous, and there's 9 blue coins to get in the boat section.
Yep.
So if you mess up one time, that's it. You have to start all over again. I think once you get a blue coin, you get to keep it, but still, you have to go from the beginning of the boat section all the way to the end and get all the blue coins. And man, it was a huge pain. It took me like 30 minutes to do all that.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, it's like a big journey getting there, and then you get to the final area, and like you can't even make to the boss. It's really irritating. Also, for some reason, when I was a kid, I had trouble with the manta ray. I don't know why, the manta ray in the casino, or outside the casino. I think my problem was I might not have realized that those water buckets were there. I don't really know. Also, another one, funny story. So, do you remember the mission in the last world that's on top of the big shine sprite? Do you remember the mission where there's just muck everywhere and they steal your flood and you have to find a way to get to the shine?
Oh, yes. I remember that one.
Okay, I feel like there were water buckets or something, but as a kid, when I played this, I would jump in the water and try to like splash to get to make a way. Maybe that's the way you're supposed to do it, but it felt like the most like jerky system and just just not how you're supposed to do it, even if it is how you're supposed to do it. Which is weird, because I know I had the guide. Maybe I got the guide, like, later. But I remember that was just a major, major tedious slog. And it worked. I was able to get to the shine, but it was a pain.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. Like, watching speedrunners actually play that star is really cool, because they aren't going to do it the normal way.
Nah.
But I think they've gotten to the point where they don't even touch the lava now. They found spots where they can just completely avoid touching that completely.
Like triple jumping or like doing some fancy stuff?
Yeah, it's like a triple jump spin, and that allows you to hover in the air for longer. And I don't remember exactly what they do, but it's really impressive.
Yeah, there's definitely a few levels in this game that are a bit wonky. So what do you think this game? There's definitely a lot of love out there for it. Like, it's not that it's like universally hated, but there is a certain amount of people that hate this game, and you know, I personally don't really get it, because I think the game does have flaws, and I agree with like the people that it's got problems. The pachinko machine, the blue coins was a decent idea, but again, bad implementation when it was hard to keep track of which ones you found and all that.
Yeah,
the voice acting. Yeah, the voice acting was awful, but I think the overall game was really fun. I think some people didn't like how Flood made platforming easier, but there were still levels without Flood, and those were great levels. What do you think? Do you think it's warranted, the hate for the game? And
Well, I mean, I guess just to start sales-wise, this is, as you could probably guess, the worst-selling 3D Mario game. It only sold like 10 million. Well, I mean, 3D World sold worse, but in terms of people hating it, I don't know if it's the level design. I think it's just the type of game, because it's not a typical Mario game. Like, it's really out there.
But there wasn't the thing is that there was no typical 3D Mario game at that point. This is the second one, so
No, well, I mean, but like after Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 came out, I think 3D Mario was really established. Like, this is how 3D Mario games are going to work. And then looking back at Sunshine, people were like, what were Nintendo thinking? Why did they do this? I personally love this game. I love to see them take a risk like this for whatever their next console is going to be. So
yeah. What do you think of Flood in general before we move on?
Flood? Oh, it's an awesome idea. Especially like the fact that they implemented, not just the two different nozzles. You could unlock the jet nozzle and the rocket nozzle. Like, those are really cool ideas. They like really enhanced the gameplay to a T. Because like with rocket nozzle, you could do like this huge dive after doing it. Like, that was really fun. You could run through the water using, I think it's called the jet nozzle. You could run through water doing that. That was really cool.
Yeah.
Like, it really helped change, like slightly change what you do in terms of platforming.
Yeah. Both of those unlockable ones they're just fun to mess around with. I probably spent the most time in this game just in the plaza, just messing around. Rocket jumping wherever I could get to, and that'd be rewarded with a shine sometimes.
And that's another cool thing about the plaza is there's actually a lot of stuff to do there. You can find, I think, 20 or 30 blue coins. There's like 4 or I'd probably say like 5 to 6 secret stars as well, which is really interesting.
There's the sewer system. There's just the whole sewer system where that's fun to run around. Yeah, this was the last 3D Mario game to have that kind of overworld. The next one has an overworld, but it's definitely not as extensive as this one. Yeah, I like Flood too. I think it's a lot of he's really cool. It's really cool. But yeah, I guess my favorite part about the whole game, or I think what makes it really cool, is just the whole aesthetic. The whole, like, you're at this tropical place, and your job is to make it look even better. Your job is to, and I know some people are like, oh, you're a janitor. It's like, well, I mean, okay, sure, you can, if you want to look at it like that, you can, or you could look at it like there's this beautiful scenery, and like a part of a reward of just playing through the game is that you get to look at it grow to be even more beautiful.
Exactly.
And that's really cool. And that's something that this game has that, like, Galaxy looks beautiful. It definitely does, both of the Galaxy games. But this one especially has not just the good looking, but it has a very specific kind of vacation resort vibe to it that makes it really interesting and really fun, I think.
Yep, yeah, I couldn't agree more. Speaking of Mario Galaxy, I guess, what were your... So this is the point in time where I think both of us were a bit more aware of what was going on in the internet. It was getting much bigger.
Oh, yeah.
What were your thoughts when this game was first announced?
I thought it looked great. Like, this seemed to be like the perfect leap. It's like, wow, you get to go into space and just float around and do all sorts of crazy stuff. It really, really felt like a big leap in, like, an amazing direction. I was very excited. How about you?
Well, I don't ask why, but this is my honest opinion. At first, I thought it looked really dumb. Like,
why?
I don't even
Nate?
know
why.
I really don't know why. Like, I remember watching the trailer a few times, and I didn't get it. I was like, Super Mario Galaxy, I don't understand. But then, when we first played it, everything changed when I first played it. Because I realized, wait a minute, the gravity's different. Like, first playing Good Day Galaxy, running upside down or up the wall, I couldn't believe what I was doing. Like, it was incredible.
Yes, so you liked it when you played it?
Yes. So when it was first announced, I was very weary about it, but then as soon as I played it, I knew I was in for a really good time. What did you think when you first played this?
Oh, I had a lot of fun with it. I was initially, and I mean I still am, just a little bit saddened at, like, the lack of an overworld and how the missions were very, very streamlined compared to the previous two games. That I think that is a step down, but I had a lot of fun with it, and if it says anything, it was the first Mario game I ever beat, and the only one I've ever 100%ed.
Yeah, actually, now that I think about it, this was probably the first one that I ever 100% as well, because I didn't 100% Mario 64 and Sunshine until after, I think, beating Mario Galaxy 2.
I still haven't beaten the final boss of Sunshine, and 64. I'm trying to think. I don't even know if I've beaten Bowser the final time in there. I mean, I know I've beaten Bowser, but you fight him a few times, so I can't even remember. But this is the one that I know that I've beat totally and completely and utterly.
Well, I feel like with this first Mario Galaxy game, it's much more, it feels more established, like, okay, these are the things that need to be done, and this is how you do them. So it feels like you're actually making more progress. I guess it's kind of hard to word this. Like with Mario 64 and Sunshine, it's like you're getting stars, but you're not sure how many you're going to need to get. But after playing like Sunshine and Mario 64, you're thinking, okay, I'm probably going to need 120 stars, because that's how much those games had. And then that's what ends up happening.
Well, you could easily get stuck in the other two games.
Yeah.
If you didn't know what you were supposed to be doing, or if there was just, there's a lot of levels in Sunshine that are just difficult, particularly later on, especially when they take away Flood and you're just kind of used to having him. But with Galaxy, I think it is an easier game. Not in a bad way, even. Just it is an easier game. It's a lot more obvious where you're going, because you're not. There are missions where you do this, but for the most part, you're not really like doing things to help people. It's a lot of like get to the end, which again, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just makes it a lot easier to finish, because you just keep playing it and you'll get to the end. Whereas with the other ones, you have to do very specific tasks that your platforming skills might not be up to it or whatever.
Yeah, and for this game, I'd probably say this is technically the first linear 3D Mario game, because most of the stars, like you said, you just go from beginning to end. There are a couple where you have to go out of your way off to the side somewhere, collect star bits for some random Luma and go to that planet to get like some secret star. But for the most part, I mean, you just kind of go from start to finish. And at the time, I didn't really think about, okay, this is a linear Mario game compared to open world. I just thought it was a slightly different way of playing it.
It's bizarre, because it's like, okay, so you have these open world games, but they take place at a castle and at a resort, versus the game that takes place across the cosmos, but that one is the one that's from point A to point B.
Yeah.
You would think that, if anything, that would be the one that's like really sprawling and open. But I guess it makes sense, because if it were open, it'd be almost too much. You wouldn't, if just every galaxy was in the same like level or whatever, you'd get so confused so fast. So what are some of your favorite levels or worlds?
So this is where things get a little iffy for me. So from Mario Galaxy and beyond, it's hard to think of favorite levels, because now they don't just have like 15 levels that you play a lot. Now it's just like 40, 50 levels in the whole game, and there's only 2 to 3 stars to complete. So I can think of a favorite level for Mario Galaxy, but the farther down we've gone in Mario games, the harder it is for me to think of specific levels I enjoyed. But I personally love Toy Time Galaxy, because it's just so creative and just really interesting. Like, you're running around on like food and cakes and forks in one level, and next thing you know, you're like running around in a 2D Mario collecting purple coins. Like, just really bizarre stuff. Like, it's really cool. Like, the spring mushroom is my only problem with the Galaxy, because that power-up is awful. It doesn't work very well. But I think it's a really satisfying Galaxy overall. Well, what do you think? What's your favorite level?
I agree. Probably thinking about it is Freeze Flame, because I'm a sucker for the duality levels. And also, cool. I seem to remember that it was one of the more challenging levels with the comets. Like, there's one where you can't get hit, and I think that one might have been one of the last stars that I ever completed. But I had a lot of fun doing it, because you just kind of like go through this really cool inferno, and then you go through the ice area and all that. So that one was a lot of fun. Toy Time Galaxy is really cool, but like you said, it's harder to pick out favorites because you're spending less time in each world, and so you're not as familiar with it. Like, a lot of what makes, for me, favorite worlds, it's not necessarily even the levels within them or like what you do, so much as the the environment. How immersive it is, how different it is, how much fun it is to just hang out in that level. And because Galaxy, you spend less time in each one because it's linear, because there's not as many missions, you don't get that as much per level as you would in earlier games, I think. Plus, I mean, obviously the other ones have been out a lot longer year wise. That we've played. You've played 64. So many times that you must be very intimate with those levels.
Oh yeah, I love all those levels at least a little bit.
So yeah, so that's my favorite level. What about anything you dislike?
Honestly,
are you gonna steal mine?
No. I can't really think of like any levels I dislike. I remember when I first played the game, I really hated the levels where you were forced to use motion controls, like riding the waves and having to tilt. Like now, I don't think it's that bad. I actually think it's kind of fun. But at the time, I really hated that. Like I couldn't understand because I wasn't used to motion controls. But now that I've become accustomed to them, I don't think it's that bad. It's just like a dumb little gimmick.
The ball ones, I think it's a good idea, but for the most part they're all right. You know what I'm talking about, where you put the joystick, like you put the controller like a joystick. But I think every so often in that level, I'd just be playing it and the ball would just move in a way that I would not expect. Like every so often, I think they hadn't quite figured it out at that point, because I don't think we had Wii Motion Plus. We definitely didn't have Wii Motion Plus at the time.
We didn't. Well, what kills me though is that those levels could have actually been really cool if we didn't have to use motion controls. Like they could have made them much more elaborate and interesting, but they couldn't do that because we had to use motion controls, and it was a lot harder to control what you're doing.
Just give the option. Just give the players the option. What about? It's not specifically a level, but how much did you enjoy second player mode?
Oh, actually, I played Galaxy 1 and 2, almost the whole thing with someone else.
Really?
I never really played second player. I was kind of selfish, not gonna lie. I did play it a couple times, but I felt player 2 was kind of like just some weird throw-in in Galaxy 1. It was a lot better in Galaxy 2. We can talk about that more when we get to that game. But yeah, it was just okay in the first game. Like they couldn't really do much.
I thought it was really stupid, but in terms of levels, the stupid garbage, blowing up the garbage, and Dreadnought's garbage dump. They cut the time on that. If they had given maybe like 10 or 15 more seconds or something, it could easily be a lot more fun. But I don't know, for me anyway, I'm sure like professional speedrunners can do it, whatever, but like for me, I'm always like, you miss one bomb or something and it's just, you're done.
It's over. Well, they do have those little gold markings. If you just throw the bomb close to that, then you'll be fine.
Yeah, but it's just really, really brutal.
I think you have to actually flick the Wii remote to throw the bomb, which makes it awkward to do.
Yeah. And it's just not very fun of an... Like, blowing up garbage. Like, really? That's what you came up with? Like, I joked about being a janitor in the last game, but like... And it's like, why? Why am I blowing up this garbage? Why can't I just move it? Why can't I spin...
And why does that have to be at a time limit? That's the weirdest part.
Yeah, it's just a lot of it that's just kind of dumb, and it felt very much like these were like last minute, we need extra stars.
Yeah.
So instead of doing something fun, here's a dumb mini game. But yeah, that's about all I can remember in terms of levels that I specifically didn't like.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you want to talk about one more subject with it, is the music. Like,
oh, this is where Mario music really started to get good.
Oh yeah, it just amazing. Just everyone loves Gusty Garden.
Oh yeah,
especially.
Gusty Garden, Good Egg Galaxy, Honey Bloom Galaxy. My favorite is the Bowser fights. When the orchestra kicks in, and then there's the opera singers. It's just like, whoa, where did this come from? Mario games don't do this, but it fits so well because they made Mario like this they made Bowser like really large in Galaxy 1 and 2, so he felt intimidating the first time around. Oh my god, it's just incredible.
Yeah, it was like a space opera, so giving it that kind of music works. I guess also while I'm thinking about it, while you mentioned boss fights, that's something I didn't like. The boss fights were repetitive because you fought them again and again, and they weren't all. There were some that were cooler than others. I like the spinny top boss, but like there's a lot of them that I can't even remember that are just, you fight them like 3 times and they don't get really harder. Yeah. They'll like, you gotta hit them one more time or something. Those could have definitely been better handled.
That's a topic in itself, though, talking about just Mario bosses and how repetitive and unoriginal they've kind of been. Like they tried to innovate, kind of, but it's like how you beat them is always in a very similar manner.
But there wasn't that much of a focus on bosses in the previous 2 games. There were bosses, but this one was the first time that they really like specifically put in like a lot of bosses, except not really. They only put in a few and then duplicated them. How about the overworld, since we mentioned it last time? What did you think about the overworld?
I think it's really cool. It almost feels unnecessary because, you know, in comparing it to like Mario 64 and Sunshine, there's actually things you need to do in the overworld. Like Mario 64, there's not a lot. You do have to find the 3 toads to get stars from. You have to find out how to flood the water in the basement. And then Sunshine, there's several secret stars, but Galaxy 1, it's just like you're walking from one place to the other, and there's not really anything to unlock besides the new galaxies.
Yeah, I think it looks good, but like I thought it was a really like sterile experience. Like it felt like I'm on a space station, but there's just no time for frills or anything. Where it just there's nothing to really find. There's nothing to explore. The only thing is there's the story time with Rosalina, but other than that, there's like nothing to do other than get to the next level.
Like it would have been cool if there were a couple stars where you had to like race a bunny around the whole observatory or something like that. Like that would have been fine. If they did something like that, but
what about like if there was a star that was like orbiting the I don't know, the conservatory or whatever, like where you one of those little blue stars that you can grab onto shows up, and you can like use those to get out to the star that's orbiting. They could have done some cooler stuff with that,
especially because they had you could get the rainbow star. And you can fly with Mario, so why not have like some random star just orbiting around? The only way to get it is, you know, get the flying Mario power-up and then just collect it that way.
Yeah, that would be really cool. But yeah, they didn't really do much. Yeah, I think it looks good and it serves its purpose. But honestly, if they're going to be that like stingy with what they do with it, I'd almost rather it have just been, I guess, kind of what we get in the second one. Although, yeah, I'm a big sucker for really good overworlds, and I would have much rather this game have had something a little bigger, or even if it was the same overworld but with stuff to do in it. Little secret areas to find, even if it was just like, here's a 1-up, you know, just something. But there's like nothing like that. I mean, you get 1-ups in the mail. Like that's what you get. You talk to a toad. Like that's super lame. Why not hide one somewhere or something?
Yeah. All right, let's move on to Mario Galaxy 2. I don't think we'll go on for that long for Mario Galaxy 2 because it's so similar to the first one. But what were your thoughts on this when it was first announced?